Something is brewing in Washington that could completely change how we save for our kids' college education. And frankly, most people have no idea it's happening. And I'm talking about the changes to the 529 college savings plan that are hiding within what they're calling the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And I've been watching this thing develop. And let me tell you, if you've got kids or grandkids headed to college, you need to pay attention to this. And even if you don't have kids, did you know that you can open a 529 account for yourself? Now, what exactly are these proposed changes to the 529 college savings plan and how might they impact your saving strategy? And first off, let's talk about K 12 education. And right now, you can use 529 funds to pay up to $10,000 per year for K 12 tuition. And that was a change made back in 2017 with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And it was a pretty big deal. But this new bill is looking to expand that significantly. And we're talking about adding 7 more categories of K 12 and homeschooling expenses that would qualify for tax-free withdrawals. This includes things like curriculum materials, books and other instructional materials, online educational materials, tutoring or educational classes outside of home, fees for nationally standardized tests, SAT, ACT, AP exams, all those fun things our kids have to deal with, and dual enrollment fees for college courses taken while still in high school. And then there are also educational therapies for students with disabilities. Now, this is a pretty major expansion. It means a lot more of those everyday educational costs, not just tuition, could be covered by your 529 plan. But here's the thing, while these new changes are exciting, states might need to pass their own legislation to conform. So what's tax-free at the federal level might not automatically be tax-free at your state level. That's why it's always a good idea to check your state-specific rules before you start planning out those expenses. Now, this is where it gets a little complex and honestly a little frustrating. You would think that could just make it they could make it universal, wouldn't you? But that's how the cookie crumbles in our federal system. Beyond K 12, the proposal also aims to make job training and continuing education expenses 529 eligible. And we're talking about tuition, books, fees, and exam costs for things like workforce credentials, trade schools, certificate programs, basically anything that helps someone get a skill or keep a skill current for a job. And this reflects a growing understanding that not everyone's path to success goes through a traditional 4-year college. And many folks are finding great careers through vocational training, and it's about time the 529 plan caught up with that reality. And then there's the ABLE account enhancements, and these are the special savings accounts for individuals with disabilities. And currently, these provisions related to ABLE accounts are set to expire at the end of 2025, and this bill would make them permanent, which is fantastic news for families caring for loved ones with disabilities. And we're talking about the Able to Work contribution limit, the Savers credit for ABLE contributions, and tax-free 529 to ABLE rollovers. And this stability and long-term planning confidence for ABLE accounts is a major win, in my humble opinion. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, or should I say the new animal in the room, the Trump kids account. And this isn't strictly a 529 plan, but it's part of the same package and aimed at youth savings. And the proposal would allow contributions of up to $5,000 per year for a child under 8 years old, with capital gains taxed at 0, 15, or 20% as the long-term capital gains tax rates when used for higher education, a first-time home purchase, or even starting a small business. That's right, a first-time home purchase or small business. And that's a significant departure from traditional education-only savings. And get this, the bill also calls for a one-time federal government contribution of $1,000 to these accounts for children born between January 1st in 2025 and January 1st, 2028. $1,000 from Uncle Sam to kickstart savings. Well, I'm not going to lie, that's pretty wild. Any unused funds could be withdrawn for any reason after age 30, with earlier withdrawals for non-qualified expenses being taxed at ordinary income rates. And it's an interesting concept to say the least, because it broadens the scope of what we typically think of as college savings. So what isn't changing? Well, federal 529 contribution rules are staying put for now, and lifetime caps are still state specific. And the existing $10,000 lifetime limit for student loan repayments and the $10,000 per year K-12 tuition limit also remain untouched. And the federal tax treatment of 529 growth and in-state tax deductions credits are still as they are. So while these are significant expansions, the core mechanics of 529s remain familiar. Now, this sounds great on paper, and honestly, it probably is. The job market is changing, and not every good paying career requires a 4-year degree anymore. My HVAC people in Las Vegas make more money than some of my friends with master's degrees, and they didn't need to take out 6 figures of student debt to get there, right? So, expanding 529 plans to cover trade schools and apprenticeships is actually smart policy, and I'm all for it. Now, the Senate finally dropped their version of this bill, and honestly, it's pretty much what we expected. And they kept most of the House stuff, but made some tweaks that tell you exactly what their priorities are. And right now, they're having a big fight, and the Trump administration is really pushing them to pass the bill by the 4th of July, but we'll see what happens. The big news for us education folks is that those 529 plan expansions are still in there, which is good news. They even clean up some of the student loan language by removing that weird requirement that loan payments had to be made before January 1st, 2026 to qualify as educational assistance. And it was just bureaucratic nonsense. Anyway, they also made some moves on college endowments that are worth paying attention to. And the endowment tax is still there, but they dialed it way back from the House's brutal 21% maximum rate. Now we're looking at a tier system that starts at 1.4% for schools with endowments between 500,000 and 750,000 per student. Goes up to 4% for those between 750,000 and $2 million per student, and maxes out at 8% for universities with more than 2 million per student. So Harvard and Yale can breathe a little easier, but they're still going to feel some pain. And I'm sure you've been following the news that the Trump administration has been going after Harvard for quite some time. Then there's also the new investment account for kids, which is the Trump account. Someone in the Senate apparently thought the original name, MAGA account, was a little too on the nose. But personally speaking, I don't care what they call them as long as they work. What I do care about is if it's going to create a further deficit. And if this account does more harm than good for this country, then I'm against it. This is most likely to motivate Americans to have more kids as we hit another all-time low birth rate in America. And I'll be honest with you, that $1,000 is going to be nice for the kids, but it's not going to change the fact that parents will still pay as much as a mortgage payment for their kids' childcare. Trust me, I've been there. Now, before we get too caught up in the legislative drama, let's shift and talk about some surprising facts about 529 plans that you might not know about. And these are things that even before those proposed changes make 529s more flexible and powerful than many people realize. So first off, 529 plans cover way more than just tuition. We're talking room and board, books, supplies, computers, and if they're required for school, and even internet access if it's necessary for coursework. With online learning becoming more common, the internet provision is pretty valuable. The key word is qualified expenses, but the list is longer than most people think. Now, this next one is huge, and it's relatively new thanks to the Secure Act 2.0. If your kid ends up with leftover money in their 529, maybe they got scholarships, maybe they decided college wasn't for them, you can now roll up to $35,000 of that money into a Roth IRA for the beneficiary over their lifetime. And this is game-changing stuff because it means that 529 money is not trapped in education-only limbo forever. There are some hoops to jump through and annual limits, but the flexibility is pretty incredible. And the transfer option is something I tell everyone about. You can change the beneficiary to any qualified family member anytime you want. Your kid decides not to go to college, transfer it to their sibling. Has the sibling already graduated? Maybe transfer it to yourself if you're thinking about going back to school. The definition of qualified family member is pretty broad too. And we're talking siblings, parents, grandparents, cousins, even in-laws. It's like a family education fund that can follow whoever needs it most. Now, here's where it gets interesting for grandparents. Not only can grandma and grandpa open their 529 accounts, but thanks to recent FAFSA changes, distributions from grandparent-owned 529 plans no longer count as student income on financial aid applications. This used to be a problem because it would reduce the financial aid eligibility, but they fixed that. So now grandparents can save for college without accidentally screwing up their grandkids' financial aid package. And you can absolutely open a 529 account for yourself as the beneficiary. And I did this years before my daughter was even born. And it was smart money. You can use it for graduate school, professional development courses, or even to pay off up to $10,000 in existing student loans. It's basically a tax advantage education fund with your name on it. And once you've got a 529 account open, anyone can contribute to it. Friends, family, the rich uncle who never knows what to buy for birthdays, they can all throw money into the account. And some plans even have gift contribution systems where people can contribute online directly. And it beats getting another toy that'll be broken in a week. And the kid will actually thank you for it when they're 18 and facing college bills. Here's something that catches people off guard. And one kid can have multiple 529 accounts, and grandma can have one. Mom and dad can have another, and they're all perfectly legal and legitimate. Each account owner gets to claim their own state tax deductions where applicable, and the money all goes towards the same kid's education expenses. It's like having multiple people on the same team, all working towards the same goal. You can even open a 529 for me if you want to. Don't do that. Most 529 plans let you set up automatic contributions, which is honestly the best way to do it. And set it and forget it, 50, 100, 200 bucks a month, whatever you can swing. The power of automation is that you're not constantly deciding to save or spend that money on something else. It just happens. And over 18 years, those automatic contributions can add up to some serious money thanks to compounding growth. Finally, you've got options for how hands-on you want to be with the investments. If you're the type who likes to research funds and adjust your allocations, most plans offer that flexibility. But if you rather not think about it, you can always choose target date funds that automatically get more conservative as your kid gets closer to college age. So what's my final take on all of this? And what does it mean for your college savings journey? And I opened a 529 account almost 13 years ago for myself and then transferred it to my daughter when she was born. I simply changed the beneficiary of that 529 account. No penalties, no fuss, no muss. Just a simple form. That initial money I had saved for my hypothetical future education immediately shifted to become a foundation for her future. And let me tell you, watching that account grow over the years has been incredibly rewarding. And it's given me a real sense of peace knowing we're building something substantial to help her avoid the crushing student loan debt that so many of us have faced. And I have more interest than the principal in that account now. With the recent proposed changes sitting in the Senate right now, especially the expansion into K-12 expenses beyond just tuition and the inclusion of vocational and continuing education, 529 plans are becoming even more powerful and adaptable. I don't think we should call them 529 college savings plan anymore. It would just call them 529 plans. And they're evolving to meet the diverse educational needs of our modern world. And the Roth IRA rollover, that rule was passed almost 3 years ago, but you have the option to fund your kid's retirement instead of education if your kid doesn't want to go to college. So here's my advice. If you're a parent, a grandparent, or just someone who wants to help a young person in your life get a leg up on their future, a 529 plan is absolutely worth looking into. Don't wait until college applications are staring you down. Start early, even with small contributions. The power of compounding interest is your best friend when it comes to long-term savings. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to your money. So do your research, talk to a professional if you need to, and start planning for those future educational endeavors. You can always schedule a session with me by visiting firesightshare.com/consultation. And this has been another beast of a video, and I hope you got a lot out of it.